This week in CIST 1602, we'll look at Chapter 12, Protection Mechanisms. So this chapter is going to introduce you to the topic of information security protection mechanisms. In this chapter, you're going to look at the use of firewalls and IDPSs, as well as some common ways they are implemented. We'll also look at some different aspects of protecting remote access connections. We'll also be looking at the basic concepts in cryptography, as well as different types of crypto systems that are commonly available. First, we'll look at introduction to protection mechanisms. And keep in mind a couple things with this. Technical controls alone, they cannot secure an IT environment, but they are an essential part of the InfoSec program. They can be used to enable policy enforcement, where the human behavior would be difficult to regulate. Now, keep in mind, though, that because individuals inside an organization, they often have direct access to that information, they can circumvent many of the most potential or potent technical controls. So, access controls, they can regulate the admission of users into trusted areas in the organization. Now, this can be something that's both logical or physical access to the facilities. They have 4 different processes here. They have identification, authentication, authorization, and accountability. And a successful access control approach, that's always going to incorporate all 4 of these elements. Now, there are 3 types of authentication mechanisms. Something a person knows, something a person has, or something a person can produce. So authentication, we'll define that as the process that validates a user's identification. For example, a password. You have your username that says, this is who I am, and the password is how you prove who you are. It's something you know in this case. So something you know, maybe a password, a passphrase, maybe a PIN number. Something you have is something that you have in your possession, whether it's a token, a smart card. Something you are is your biometrics, your fingerprint, facial recognition, whether it's a digital camera, photographic ID card, retinal print, iris pattern. Now, when we're talking about biometrics, keep in mind that there's only 3 human characteristics that are usually considered truly unique: your fingerprints, the retina of your eye, and the iris of your eye. So the most widely accepted biometric authorization technology is a photo identification card. And from that, it's going to be read by a human guard or gatekeeper. The reason why it's one of the most widely accepted is because it is expensive and it's something that's highly reliable. Now, the most effective biometric authorization technology is the retinal scanning. It's highly accurate, very accurate, highly repeatable. Keep in mind, though, that a lot of users find it very obtrusive. So managing network security, a firewall, that's a device that prevents specific types of information from entering or exiting a network. So it's going to provide it's going to stop that specific type of information from moving around in your network. Firewall can be a physical device. It can be a logical Windows. It can be set on a network. It can be set into your operating system. So it may be a separate computer system or just a service. Now, when you look at the firewalls, you can think about what are the typical relationships between the untested network, the firewall, and a trusted network. So think of the outside world is your untrusted network, so the internet. The trusted network is going to be the inside of your organization. It's the internal network. And the firewall is the device that prevents any specific type of information moving between the untrusted and the trusted network. So think of it as the gatekeeper. So we do have some different categories of firewalls. Um, the most common types of firewalls are a packet filtering firewall. Those are simple networking devices that filter out packets. It examines every incoming and outgoing packet header. From there, they can selectively filter packets based on values in the packet header. They can accept or reject packets as needed. These devices can be configured to filter based on IP addresses, types of packet, port requests, or other elements that are present in the packet. So when we look at the application layer proxy firewalls, these are basically like packet. They work like packet filtering firewalls, but they work on the application layer. Stateful packet inspection firewalls. They keep track of each network connection that's established between internal and external systems. And they use a state table. Okay, that state table tracks the state and context of each packet exchange when recording which station sent which packet and when. The unified threat management devices, they're categorized by their ability to perform the work of a stateful packet inspection, firewall, network intrusion detection and prevention systems, content filter, spam filter, and as well as malware scanner and filter. Another topic we're going to talk about is next generation firewalls. These are similar to the UTM devices. They combine traditional firewall functions with other network security functions such as deep packet inspection, IDPSs, and also the ability to decrypt encrypted traffic. Now, these, as I said, are the functions going to be similar to those of UTM devices. The difference is really going to be in the vendor's description of those. Now, we do have some different types of ways that firewalls can be implemented, and you can put these in a number of architectural configurations. The three architectural implementation firewalls that are especially common are a single bastion host architect, screened host firewalls, or screened subnet firewalls. Single bastion host architecture, a single device is configured to filter packets, and it serves as the sole security point between the two networks. Now, unfortunately, this represents a rich target for external attacks. Screened host firewall systems combine the packet filtering router with a separate dedicated firewall. This would be something such as an application proxy server or a proxy firewall. So the approach for this, it allows the router to screen the packets to minimize the network traffic and the load on the internal proxy, while the proxy examines an application layer protocol such as HTTP and performs the proxy services. A screened subnet architecture consists of special network segments with one or more internal hosts located behind a packet filtering router. Each host is going to perform a role in protecting the trusted network. Now, the functionality difference between the screened host architects and the screened subnet architecture is the addition of packet filtering behind the bastion host or the host. And that's going to provide more security and restrict access to internal hosts only to traffic that's approved in the interior firewall device's rule set. There are some questions you need to ask yourself when you're evaluating firewalls. First is what type of firewall technology offers the right balance between protection and the cost for the needs of the organization. What features are included in the base price and what are available at extra cost, and all the cost factors known. How easy is it to set up and configure the firewall? How accessible are the staff technicians who can configure the firewall? Also, can the firewall adapt to the growing network? Now, keep in mind also the placement of your firewall within the network is going to have additional costs associated with the maintenance whether it's maintenance contracts, rule set acquisition or validation, and then signature subscriptions. Another type of tool that effectively protects the organization's system from misuse and unintentional DOS conditions across the network is the content filter. The content filter allows administrators to restrict content that comes into the network. Now, these are used to ensure employees are not using the network resources inappropriately. Now, any firewall device must have its own configuration rules that regulate its actions. So you have a policy that's going to regard the use of firewalls that should be articulated before the firewall is made operable. So when you configure the firewall rule sets, when you're putting these in place, sometimes you can be a little bit of a nightmare. Each firewall rule must be carefully crafted, must be placed in the list in the proper sequence, debugged, and tested. The firewalls are also limited by the constraints of their programming and the rules that are set in these following ways. Firewalls are not creative, cannot make sense of human actions outside the range of their programmed responses. So whatever you program that firewall to do is what it will exactly do. They deal strictly with defined patterns of measured observation, which are known to possible attackers and can be used in an attack. Keep in mind, firewalls are computers, and they are prone to programming errors, flaws in the rule sets, and any inherent vulnerabilities. They're also designed to function within limits of hardware capabilities, and thus can only respond to patterns of events that happen in an expected and reasonably simultaneous sequence. Firewalls are also designed, implemented, configured, and operated by people. And this is a big one here, is that they are subject to human error. Now, we do have some administrative challenges to the operation of firewalls. First is training. So you want to make sure that people are trained on the firewall. Uniqueness, so every brand of the firewall is going to be different. Responsibility, so you want to make sure that one of the issues that if you are the firewall guy, everyone assumes that everything to do with computer security is your responsibility. That's not necessarily the case, depending on the size of your organization. On the other hand, if you're in a medium or large organization, managing that firewall should be a full-time position, a full-time job, but a lot of times you're going to be doing more than just working on the firewall. Now, some of the best practices for firewall use are to allow traffic from the trusted network is allowed out, all the traffic. Keep in mind, though, to keep ports closed that you are not using. You make sure the firewall device is never accessible directly from the public network. Your simple mail transport protocol, data is allowed to pass through the firewall. Make sure that it's routed to a well-configured SMTP gateway. All internet control message protocol data should be denied. Telnet and or terminal emulation access to internal servers from the public network should be blocked. HTTP traffic should be handled by some form of proxy access or a DMZ architecture. So IDPSs, they work by detecting an intrusion or violation on a network and then triggering an alarm. So an IDPS, they can be configured to prevent an attack, such as terminating a network connection, changing network devices, or modifying traffic. And they're going to utilize one or two base detection methods, either a signature-based statistical signature-based or statistical anomaly-based. Now, a couple of things we talk about IDPSs. A host-based IDPS works by configuring and classifying various categories of systems and data files. So unless that IDPS is precisely configured, some benign actions can generate a large volume of false alarms. The host-based IDPSs can also monitor multiple computers simultaneously by storing a client's file on each monitored host, and then making that host report back to the master console. That's usually going to be located on the system administrator's computer. A network-based IDPS, it monitors network traffic. And when a predefined condition occurs, it's going to notify the appropriate administrator. It looks for a pattern of network traffic. It must match known and unknown attack strategies against their knowledge base to determine whether an attack has occurred. These systems yield many more false positive readings than the host-based. And that's because they're attempting to read the network activity pattern and determine what is normal and what is not. A signature-based IDPS, it's also known as a knowledge-based IDPS. It examines data traffic for something that matches the signatures or the predetermined attack patterns. Now, the problem with this approach is that signatures must be continuously updated. Also, keep in mind that if an attackers are slow and methodical, they may be able to slip undetected through the IDPS because their actions may not match a signature. That's going to include factors based on the duration of the events. Anomaly-based IDPS is also called behavior-based IDPS. First, it collects data from normal traffic and establishes a baseline. From there, it's going to periodically sample network activity and compare the samples to the baseline. When that activity falls outside the baseline parameters, the IDPS is going to notify the administrator. Now, keep in mind, IDPS the anomaly-based IDPS is able to detect new types of attacks. So it's looking for any abnormal activity. Now, these require significant processing capabilities, and they constantly attempt to match activity to the baseline. Once again, you may generate many false positive warnings. Now, when you're working with an IDPS, it's only going to record information by default. It's not going to take any action until it's properly configured to do so. There are different types of security alerts that can be sent by an IDPS, such as text messages, emails, creation of log entries. If or an IDPS, it uses an agent or sensor to monitor a system and report back to the management server. Now, I can't stress the importance of securing the agent communication channel. Okay, you want to make sure that that is secure as well. So you want to make sure that your IDPS is properly configured. And keep in mind, a poorly configured IDPS is may only yield noise. So if it's only sending out an alarm, it needs to perform some of these other tasks as well. It needs to be configured to send text messages, emails, create log entries, not just send off an inaudible alarm. So when organizations make use of wireless networks, most of these are going to be based off the IEEE 802.11. Now, the size of a wireless network's footprint is going to depend on the amount of power of the wireless access points. So we do have some encryption protocols that are used in wireless network. Most common is the WPA family of protocols. Unfortunately, the predecessor for this, the WEP, is still in use, but it is considered to be the most insecure and easily breached. It does. It's the wired equivalent privacy encryption. Uh, it's part of the IEEE 802.11 standards. It can be used to provide very basic security for wireless network. I really do not recommend it. It has many flaws. Can be easily exploited to gain access to the network. The WPA is a set of protocols which was designed as an intermediate solution until the full availability of the 802.11i standard, which is utilized in the WPA2. Now, most wireless network cards work with a WPA, but not all of them are going to be compatible with a WPA2. The WPA and WPA2 do provide more security than the WEP. WiMAX, or wireless MAN, is the next generation of wireless networking. And it's going to be based on technology that was developed for cell phones and modems. The WiMAX is going to be part of the 802.16 standard. And it is a certification mark. It stands for Worldwide Interoperability for Microwave Access. Bluetooth is the industry standard for short-range wireless communication between devices, usually within 30 feet. Now, Bluetooth devices can be extremely vulnerable without the use of proper security controls, because Bluetooth by default does not authenticate connections. If a device is in discoverable mode, it can be easily accessed. But even if it's not in discoverable mode, it is susceptible to access by other devices that have connected with it in the past. The only method to secure Bluetooth-enabled devices is to turn off Bluetooth functionality when it's not in use. Also, to refuse any incoming pairing requests unless the requester is known. One thing to keep in mind with Bluetooth is blue snarfing. That occurs when an attacker uses Bluetooth connection to gain unauthorized access to information. This may be information such as a calendar, your contact list, emails, or text messages. Now, it's also possible to restrict access to the network to a pre-approved set of wireless network MAC cards or MAC addresses. Now, one of the first requirements to regulate the size of a wireless network, their footprint, is by adjusting the placement and the strengths of the wireless access points. You want to select the WPA or WPA2 over the WEP, and also protect pre-shared keys. Scanning and analysis tools, they can find vulnerabilities in systems. They can find holes in security components and also other unsecured aspects of the network. So these scanning tools collect information that an attacker needs to succeed. Footprinting is the organized research of the internet addresses owned or controlled by a target organization. So network footprinting yields a network analysis of a set of internet addresses, and those can be later analyzed to find a way into the system. Footprinting is the initial investigation. That's where the details of the organization's machines and how the system is set up is found. Fingerprinting now is going to be the use of that information from footprinting to where they can detail vulnerabilities and find out the detailed system information that can be used to gain entry into the systems for their attack. Port scanners are a group of utility software applications that can identify active computers on a network, the active ports and services of those computers, and also the computer's functions and roles and other useful information. So we look at a port. That's a network channel or connection point in the data communication system. Well-known ports are those from 0 to 1023. Registered ports are from 1024 to 49,151. Dynamic and private ports go from 4,152 to 65,535. So this is a big security flaw when you leave these ports open. If you're not using a port, you need to make sure that you close that port. Now, a lot of organizations ban port scanning activities on their internal networks. And the reason why is because it's an easy way for a hacker to get that footprint for a large number of computers very quickly. And it also takes unnecessary system and network resources. And that slowdown can affect the office productivity. Also, ISPs may ban outboard port scanning. And they do that because it can be considered a denial of service attack, which could lead to lawsuits. Now, large ISPs with broadband users, this could be made, or the customer's computers could be used as drone computers to where they can facilitate a DOS attack against a large network. Vulnerability scanners are variants of port scanners, and they scan networks for detailed information. You may be able to grab usernames and groups, see the open networks, and expose configuration problems and other vulnerabilities with a vulnerability scanner. Packet sniffer can be used to collect and view all packets on a network or a certain set of addresses. It shows encrypted and clear text transmission and allows an administrator or hacker to view these packets. If the packets are in clear text, then all the text can be easily viewed. Many common services still transmit packets in clear text. These include a FTP, email, instant messenger, and also there are upgrades for each of these servers that allow the SSL encryption. Now, if you're going to use a packet sniffer legally, it must be on a network that the organization owns, not leases, be under the direct authorization of the network owners, have the knowledge and consent of the users, and also have a justifiable business reason for doing so. All right, trap and trace applications, they are used to entice individuals who are illegally pursuing the internal areas of a network to determine who they are. So things like the honey nets or honey pots, where they entice individuals to try to go over there. They're made purposely vulnerable, so they are there to attract and distract potential attackers. Now, a monitored network or network segment that contains multiple honey pots is going to be referred to as the honey net. So that's the trap section of this. The trace is the process which the organization attempts to determine the identity of someone that's been discovered in these unauthorized areas of the network. All right, some systems are configured to record common sets of data by default, and while others systems must be configured to be activated. This data is generally going to be referred to as your log files or simply the logs. Now, log generations involve the configuration of the system to create logs, which will typically require activating the logging on various servers, and then also defining where the logging data is stored. So we do have some issues of log generation that could include multiple log sources, inconsistent log content, timestamps, also the format. There are some emerging technologies that we have to manage security with. One thing to think about is that when a new technology is looking to be adopted, the technology security team, they should look at this and say, well, do the benefits of the proposed technology justify the expected cost? of implementing that technology. And some of these new technologies may be a bring your own device, um, embedded systems, Internet of Things, um, blockchains. That's a decentralized method of storing data in a network of computers. That's where a continuously growing linked list of records is going to be stored using cryptographic techniques. Cryptography. Cryptography is going to have two components. You have cryptography and cryptanalysis. Cryptography means hidden. Uh, and so it describes the process involved in encoding and decoding messages so that others cannot understand them. Cryptanalysis, meaning to break up, is the process of deciphering the original message, which would be in plain text, from an encrypted message, which is ciphertext. And that's without knowing the algorithms or keys that are used to perform the encryption. Which in encryption, the most commonly used algorithms include the three functions, substitution, transposition, or XOR. All right, so in the substitution cipher, you substitute one value for another. The transposition cipher, it simply rearranges the values within a block, and it's used to create a ciphertext, and this can be done at the bit level or the byte level, the character level. The XOR cipher, the bit stream is subjected to a Boolean XOR function against some other data stream, and that's normally known as the key stream. So in this case, you look at this, the XOR works simply if the two values are the same. So if the two values are the same, you get a 0. If not, you get a 1. So this is something that's also reversible. So if you XOR the ciphertext with a key string, you get the plain text. Now, two types of encryption. We have the systematic encryption and the asymmetric encryption. The symmetric encryption, this uses one key to encrypt and one key to decrypt, the same key. So this is also known as private key encryption. The difficulty with this is the sharing of the key. Asymmetric encryption, or as public key encryption, uses two pairs, two different keys. They are related. You have a private and a public key. So you would, for example, I would use if you were sending me a message, you would use my public key to encrypt the message, send me the message, and then I could use my private key to decrypt and read the message. Digital signatures make use of encrypted messages. This is where the authenticity of that message can be independently verified by a central facility. And it can also be used to prove certain characteristics of the message or file which they are associated. So it uses a registry to verify the authenticity of the message. Digital certificates, an electronic document. It's attached to the file that certifies that the file is from the organization it claims to be from and has not been modified from the original format. Now, these certificates are issued by a certificate authority. Public key infrastructure, PKI, it's described as a set of hardware, software, and crypto systems necessary to implement public key encryption. This increases the capabilities of an organization to protect its information assets, and it provides authentication. So you have digital certificates and a PKI system permit individuals, organizations, and web servers to authenticate the identity of each of the parties of an internet transaction. It also protects the integrity because a digital certificate demonstrates that the content signed by the certificate has not been altered while in transit. Confidentiality, the PKI keeps information confidential by ensuring it's not been intercepted during transmission over the internet. Authorization, the digital certificate issued in a PKI environment, it can replace user IDs and password, enhance security, and also reduce some of the overhead required for authorization process and controlling access privileges for a specific transaction. Non-repudiation, the digital certificates can validate actions, making it less likely that the customer or partners can later repudiate a digitally signed transaction, such as an online purchase. You can also use a hybrid system that can be used to combine asymmetric key encryption with symmetric key encryption. So with this method, the asymmetric key encryption, I choose to exchange the symmetric key. And then in this, the two organizations can conduct quick, efficient, and secure communications based on the symmetric encryption. Lastly, we look at managing cryptographic controls. Number one is don't lose your keys. Know who you're communicating with. Security protocols and crypto systems are only secure as their configuration allows. But keep in mind that every crypto system does have its weakness. You want to follow the principle of least privilege and give access only to those with a business need. When you're looking at a certificate authority, you want to ask yourself, who watches the watchers? Who watches the certificate authority? Is this a reputable company? There is no security in obscurity. Security protocols and crypto systems that they use are subject to the same limitations as firewalls and IDPSs. And then make sure your organization's use of cryptography is based on well-constructed policies and supported with sound management procedures.